Hello learners, Dr. Paul here with a video summary for Unit 2. And in this unit, we talked about the process of asking questions. And questions are a very unique tool in the therapy process. And I think we tend to overlook that. There's a sense, if you take a step back and think, well, why do we ask questions in therapy? And for the most part, therapy is a process of asking questions and making statements. But you can have different intentions as you ask questions. For example, probably the most common reason therapists give for asking specific questions is because they're trying to gather information. And in gathering information, the idea is then once we gather enough information, we'll have an understanding or an assessment of what's going on. And then we'll be able to intervene in some way. So it's important, I think, that we look at the intention to gather information as pretty much connected to a medical model orientation. And what's interesting about family therapy is that with postmodern influences back in the early to mid-'80s, therapists started to look at the questioning process not necessarily with the intention of gathering information, but with the intention of intervening. So a question like the miracle question, sure, you're gathering information about what family member's miracle might be, but you're also intervening because you're getting people oriented towards small and specific changes. So this idea came into therapy from theorists who were influenced by postmodern ideas that we don't necessarily have to look at the intention for asking questions to simply gather information to assess in order to fix or change, which again is connected to a medical model perspective, but more so using questions as interventions in and of themselves. We can also take this a step further and say an intention for asking questions in therapy could also be to deeply connect and develop a strong therapeutic relationship with clients. And believe it or not, if you really deeply connect with your clients in ways that your client is saying, yes, exactly, you understand what I'm going through or what we're going through right now, that deep connection with clients has a way of sparking them to come up with spontaneous solutions or spontaneous resources or ways of understanding their situation that make the necessity for a formal kind of intervention or a formal homework assignment oftentimes unnecessary. So it's a good idea to begin thinking about what is your intention when you're asking questions in therapy, and what happens if you shift that intention. How does that impact the therapy process? How does that impact your role as a therapist, etc., etc.? Now, the other thing we talked about is therapy models in this unit, and I'm fond of saying that again, therapy models are not like medicine, and we don't necessarily connect them with a medical model understanding that if you prescribe a medicine, it's sort of the same thing of doing a certain kind of therapy. So at their most basic level, a therapy model is a set of ideas about how we should behave in therapy and how we should understand clients and their presenting problems in therapy. So we tend to imbue models with a lot more juice, and we tend to see them as a lot more of the engine that drives therapy. And what you learn after you do therapy for a while is that they are very useful maps, models, but they're not necessarily the driving force. And what I've learned in 20 some odd years of doing therapy, again, is a strong, solid therapeutic connection. And at residency, we'll talk and show a little bit about what we mean by a strong therapeutic connection. So it's not just joining skills to make clients feel comfortable while we figure out how to change them, but we really connect with them in a way that they are freed up by some of the tyranny of their presenting problem, and they are freed up to think and behave differently because of that therapeutic connection. And again, I think we'll have lots of examples that we can talk about more specifically in residency. So, okay, quick summary for Unit 2. I want to also encourage you or remind you that if you do have a fieldwork site secured and you do have some experience with that process, bring whatever written materials you have so that we can share that with the the track one people, and that'll be the portfolio part of the process. Great. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys shortly.